You can now listen to episodes of the Flying Monkey Podcast anywhere podcasts are available, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and more. You can also watch the video podcast on our YouTube and Rumble channels. Just search the Flying Monkey Podcast and make sure to subscribe and share. You're watching the Flying Monkey Podcast.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Flying Monkey Podcast. We got a special episode for you here, and we were invited recently to cover a powerful town hall meeting in Orange County, California, regarding lots of different things, but mostly focused on the court system and court reform, which is much needed in the state of California and as well as the entire country, if not the entire Western world. The event was hosted by Parents for Accountability and Julie Holburn, an investigative reporter who covers a lot of family courts and CPS stories. She also served as the MC. And the panel featured gubernatorial candidates for California, Daniel Mercuri, Louis Herms, Elaine Culotti, and Gretha Solorzano. And there were also some candidates for Orange County Board of Supervisors, which were Vellema and Kimberly Davis. The conversation tackled some pretty serious issues: the systemic failures in the family courts, the juvenile system, CPS, foster care, and even the probate courts, and the urgent need for immediate and meaningful reform. Something's got to be done. Something has to change. So it was pretty enlightening to hear these people. They were right on the money. They had some really great comments, ideas, and plans to make things better for children and for society as a whole. So we had some real conversations and talked about the real failures and how it affects families. So a lot of media showed up. It was a 4.5 to 5 hour long town hall meeting. And so we compiled some of the best comments and most notable statements and truths made by these candidates. So let's take a listen.
About accountability and transparency. And most importantly, it's about the children and families. Before I became a journalist, I was a mother trying to navigate the very system we're here to discuss tonight. Like many families in this room, I reported abuse. I sought help through the courts, through law enforcement, and public officials. And like so many others, I encountered a system that at times did not function as it exists on paper. My experience didn't just change my life, it changed my purpose. I didn't go looking for this work, it found me.
Amen.
Amen. I became an investigative journalist because I lived this. And through this work, I began to see something bigger than one case. Patterns. Patterns in how cases are handled, patterns in how evidence is treated, patterns in how families describe their experiences, not just here in Orange County, but across California and across the entire nation. Tonight is not about one side versus the other. It's not about mothers versus fathers. It's about one question. Are our systems working the way that they are intended to work for children, for families, and victims of abuse?
No.
And for justice? Correct.
Three times listening.
And if they're not, which we know they're not, what are we going to do about it? This is why we're here tonight, to have a real conversation and ask real questions. Thank you for being here.
For those of us that are protected parents are losing everything financially and everything we have to fight to save our children that are being abused. Thank you.
Legislature keeps drafting egregious legislation. The executors pretty much point the finger and blame everybody else, and nobody gets anything done. And then all of us sort of suffer at the hands of their lack of accountability. And so I've spent a very long time. June is my 7-year mark. And I've given out over 1,000 free copies of my book. It's not about the money, it's about waking up the people and fighting back. So at the end of the day, I'm not running because I want to be your leader, I'm running because I want to
elephants in the room or not in the room. We need to talk about this. So two major candidates on the Republican Party were invited here and bowed out. But you know who's not here, who will not be here, and who's dodging all of this? The mainstream media. And frankly, it's offensive. Because I can tell you, regardless of your party affiliation, but the NPP independent votes are 30%.
Yes, they are.
And the Republicans are only 24%.
Amen.
So this now is a call to action. It's a call to action to you. It's a call to action to everybody working and watching. We won't take it anymore. We cannot that all of these candidates really are much better than the select.
Running for governor of California, and I'm an NPP.
I've gotten to know the other people that are running. And this is important to me to say before we get into child services and transitioning children and probate, we are in an emergency, and he is right, it's a call to action. What is happening is, I'm going to try to explain it in the easiest way I can. In order for a candidate to get onto a debate stage, there has to be a poll. And these are called media polls. And there are a lot of them. Media polls are put together by Democrats. They're put together by DNC, they're put together by Act Blue. And the reason that media polls are put together that way is as you've seen, most of these big debates have a media partner. And the media partners are CBS, Democrats, NBC, Democrats. And this is a bipartisan meeting, so this is just the facts. CNN, Democrats. They do their own polling. On the poll, they list the number of the candidates that they want you to vote on. What do you think about this candidate? What do you think about that candidate? What do you think about this candidate? None of these people, including me, are ever in the poll. They are just Democrats and the 2 or 3 leading Republicans. They have to put the Republicans because it's called equal time, but we do not qualify for equal time somehow, and that's because
15 seconds.
California views California as a 2-party state.
Yes.
When you hear that they have polled independents, what they mean is they sent out a poll and they asked independent voters who they wanted. They did not poll any independent candidates. And so we are stuck in a cycle that we cannot get out of. And there is not free time. And I urge all of you to contact your local network and say MPPs are 23% registered. That is 1 point different than Republicans. We are not
Thank you.
a non-party.
My son was taken from me a year ago by the family courts in Orange County. And once that happened, I said, no more. No, none of this is going to happen to families anymore. I'm your change agent. When I get voted in for 2nd District Supervisor, they're going to hate to see me coming. Because I'm honest. I lead with integrity. And the first thing I'm going to do is start exposing the programs and the people that are behind this corruption.
Amen.
Children and our families are suffering. It's been too long that this has been going on, and it needs to stop immediately. The most important thing for you guys to do is get out and register to vote. And vote when you guys are needed to vote. June 2nd or before, but vote please. Because this is an opportunity to create change. I'm going to make sure whatever I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. When I'm elected and you're going to say, what is happening? And they're going to say, Kimberly Davis is now in the House. I have knowledge, I have experience, and I'm ready. So please get out and vote and get us in office so you guys can start seeing change happening. Thank you.
Currently, what
call CPS, they immediately take down the information as an educator, since I'm a mandated reporter. However, when I called CPS on my son's abuse, and other individuals had called it in, it was information only.
That's right.
So it needs to improve, there needs to be accountability. And any system that's not abiding by the Constitution needs to be abolished.
Yes.
The taxpayer dollars should never be utilized and be unaccounted for. This is what we will be able to do. We can't change the judicial decisions, but we have the power to ensure where the funding is going.
So first day in office, I'm going to create a public dashboard. This public dashboard is going to be a real-time system. First day I'm going in, task force, we're going to audit programs, and we're going to go where this money is going. If there's any misappropriation of funds, that program funding is good wrong. And we relocate it to a program that it needs.
Yes.
So, accountability, there needs to be oversight for these programs because they're going unchecked now. And they should be answering the public because these seats are given by the public. There's a lot of money that's going to personal use and instead of going to the public, instead of going to the children, instead of going to the families. And now we create policy changes. Because these kids should never be taken from families that report abuse because they want to get money off their backs. No more. So oversight and accountability for Kimberly Davis and the District 2. Thank you.
Did you know that abuse went down dramatically when they installed cameras on them?
Yeah.
Dramatically. The challenge is they're able to turn them on and off too, right? There's no turning the camera on or off, and a judge has no right, in my opinion, to say, no, we don't want transparency. In fact, if he ever tried to do that, that should put him up for audit immediately.
It's about freedom, and freedom involves the hard truths, and that's something that I constantly preach about. So when it comes to the Bar Association, I always like to say this, and people say, oh, that's just conspiracy. But I always look at, and there are codes about this, that the Bar stands for British Accredited Registry. A lot of people lawyers say, no, that's not what that means. That's actually not true, because it goes much further back, and that lawyer who doesn't think that doesn't actually know their own history.
Right.
But who do you serve? The Crown? Or you serve the United States Constitution? So the administrations, we're going to ensure that the California Bar and the ABA, the American Bar Association, are going to be held to a much higher standard because the standards that we have right now are pumping out a bunch of Marxists.
I'm not in this for a job or a reputation. Like Daniel, I mean, our family is completely destroyed by the system because we've been fighting too hard. Poisoned 2 times, cutting brakes and brake lines and things like that. So what happens when you stand up, right? And absolutely, it's the British Accredited Registry. Just go look it up yourself. Don't use AI though, because they are now set up to reverse that information. Think about that, right? So we have to be very careful when we're saying, oh, let's rely on AI, because it's all everything for conspiracy theory, right? But transparency is number one. It has to be number one. The only way we the people take it back, is through transparency. Because what you don't know, right? Even the budget, I'm taking the whole budget and putting it online, itemized, for y'all to audit 24/7 anytime you want. Can you imagine if everything, we had at least 10 to 100,000 digital warriors sitting into it all the time? The whole system would not be able to cooperate the way they are together right now. So transparency is, again, very, very easy. The only way that we, the people, will ever take everything back is through honesty, transparency, and number one, authenticity.
And my dear friend, God knows this is a judge. We're not friends anymore because over the years I watched the corruption in the judicial system. So I'm not going to name names. But one of the most interesting things that I found was these great trips that they would take to Vegas and to all these big hotels, and they would be judicial conferences. And these judicial conferences would be funded in part by the Bar Association. And you would have the Bar Association and all the lawyers that work at the Bar Association, they'd be whining and dining, having dinner, and carrying on, and then the next day they would be back in court. They would fly on private jets provided by Tom Girardi. There was so much corruption in the judicial system in Los Angeles, I could not believe my eyes. And everybody knew everything. And while there is judicial review, if there's a conflict, clearly it doesn't matter. Judges are best in stock. Judges are still sitting on a panel about a company that was invested in that stock. This is the same with all of our people that are involved in the Senate, all of our people that are involved in Congress. Famously, Nancy Pelosi is one of the best stock, analysts ever in history. This is because it has become so corrupt. And if we do not walk it back and start to implement the laws that are in place, we're never going to clean up the corruption between the legal system, the Bar Association, and the judicial system.
You should have a pro se advocate, right? Somebody that is actually advocating and helping the person. But here's where I would defer from everything. That advocate must not reside or work within the same county structure that the case is in.
Oh, that's amazing.
Think about it. Because what do we have? We have nepotism at the highest levels, all through the judiciary and all through the lawyers and all of it. This is what happens. It happens in every county in the United States of America. And it's very important to know. So it's easy to take care of that. It's hard to buy somebody off or have favor if you don't know who the hell they are. Right? We should have contracts with other counties on how to do this to support those that cannot support themselves. And here's the reality. This leaves clues. You will find out, and this is why it's very, very important, and I believe we should do a full judicial investigation starting with month 1, because I truly believe that most of the problems are in judicial activism and the relationships with the attorneys and the law firm that are supposed to be having no say in whatsoever.
Now, the court is civil, it's not criminal. So under the, I think it's the Second Amendment, right, that's under common law. Common law, again, is civil under the laws of nature and nature's God, written the Declaration of Independence. I know a lot of people get tired of why does he mention all this? Because I want you to know where I found it. I want you to know where the information is at. Attitudes and say, we're going to fight for you. Well, how are you going to fight for you? Right? So when you look at that means when you're under a civil proceeding, one of the biggest things that is removed from a parent is the Fifth Amendment. And that Fifth Amendment is your right to silence. And just because you're silent and you don't want to answer certain questions doesn't mean you have to. It's not an admission of guilt, and it's not an admission to an agreement. It simply means you don't want to self-incriminate yourself because the courts are stacked against you, always. Which is why all crime is commercial. There's always a financial institution that needs that monetary gain. And so one of the things that the states don't do, and the states can do, especially when it comes to having an AG, the California Bar, is instituting a protocol to ensure that anybody can go into the courts as you can self-litigate, but to be a pro se litigant means that the courts are always against you. They don't actually walk you through it. They don't help you. They're not there to support you. If you want to go down that path so that you don't have to actually have fines, so that you can ensure fair practice, that you're getting the results that you want, that you need, that's in also a balance of favor. And so we actually remove that away from parents who don't know how to engage in pro se. And if you don't understand that, well, then that's why a lot of times, unfortunately, a good parent gets their child taken away into the parent who's the most abusive that they shouldn't be in their hands. And so in my administration, we're going to show that we're going to open up those doors, which the governor can do, because CPS and a lot of other agencies have those people who are appointed by the governor. So let's make sure that we go down that route. So let's look at California. We have, who's in charge of CPS? Most people don't know. If you look at CPS, it's actually overseen by the California Department of Social Services. Some people know, some people don't know. I think right now the director is Jennifer Torrey. I think that's her name, or Tora. Anyway, who is she appointed by? Gavin Newsom. that oversees every county's CPS, that is also headed by the social services of each county, that are also appointed by the Board of Supervisors. But those are state agencies are all funded by the state. Who influences the state budget? The governor. Even though the legislature comes up with the budget, the governor controls who's appointed to those agencies and decides whether or not those state agencies, commissions, and boards, which I believe in California there's over roughly 512, 520, can be cut in half. You want your job? You need to get in line. You want to maintain that you're going to be the director, you're going to be appointed, then you need to get in line. And when it comes to judges, I think it's we have the Judicial Compensation Commission. Where do they get their money from? Every year, they like to give themselves a large dose of pay raise at your expense. No, you don't get one. You're going to be subject to tax investigation because it's also laundering, and they're not performing the way they're supposed to according to the Constitution. And this is when we talk about what can a governor do, what can a governor not do. That is exactly what a governor does. And so you put me in office, this is exactly what I'm going to do. We're going to make sure that these commissions are cut in half. We're going to make sure that I appoint new directors. And then we're going to ensure that all these CPS agencies in every county are going to be disbanded. There aren't going to be any.
So absolutely, the governor has the pocketbook here. So there's a lot of influence on there, and we can point to overseas CPS. 100%. How did we get there? Money, 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 money. That's the reality. So when I first started investigating this a long time ago, I was shocked to find out that the average case that goes into foster care raises through the system $85,000. Oh no, it got worse. Because then I dug deeper and it was $110,000. Oh, it gets worse. In California, dig deeper. Some of them go up to $250,000 per child of the money that goes into the system between medical, psychological, the attorneys, the judges. It is a money operation. $250,000. Did you know that there was actually a test in Texas in a county, and they proved that 90% of the CPS cases, which is also DCS, by the way, that's another way to convert from CPS, 90% of those cases, 90% would have never happened with $2,500 put in the right place.
I'm sorry.
$2,500. This is a proven fact. And this is why, because it's the education. Sometimes it's a pair of shoes. Sometimes it's helping a parent learn the best way to clean your house. And sometimes it's where to sleep. Let's get fleas out of the house. And $2,500. They don't want that to happen. Why? Because it does not feed the animal. So we can make a huge influence as governor right in that way. Because again, education, people understanding how it works. Nobody's going to want to spend $250,000 to rip a child from their home.
Thank you.
What if a pro se advocate or somebody that's defending you, you have to sign a contract and say they have no relationship whatsoever with the other side? I want you to think about that, how powerful that thing is. Because it is nepotism, and I've said this probably 30 to 50 times today. I've studied this, it is all nepotism. This is why we're having trouble getting a fair verdict or trial or anything in regards to this. Because it's nepotistic as everything. I'm telling you, even in standard law, you have the public defender that has a relationship with the DA. Right? A really tight relationship with the DA. It's disgusting. So they'd have to have a contract that said, no, I don't. This is why that cross-pollination of counties really work in this case. It's very, 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 very possible to do. But ultimately, I believe you should absolutely be able to call for a jury of your peers. Ultimately, that's what's going to take care of all this, because it doesn't really matter what the judge, it doesn't matter what the attorneys try to motivate or manipulate. Right? And not all judges and attorneys are that. Just 99.9%.
anything. So that's where my big advocacy.
We're talking about laundering money. As we know, there's already protocols that are already outlined. A lot of things have already been built into the framework that we have when it comes to foster care, when it comes to a lot of these agencies to ensure that there's ensuring proper funding. But what we don't have is, we already have state controllers in the state of California. The problem is state controllers that oversight different agencies, commissions, and boards are mismanaging those numbers purposely. That usually stem from the legislative branch or the executive branch and so on. So then it's never appropriated the right way. So how do we know what's going on? There's never a public oversight committee. There's never a public oversight controller. Why don't we have that to ensure that government is also staying true to the facts of what's being reported? And then, of course, when it comes to investigations in journalism, to ensure that we hold these documents, it's never out there publicly, or they block it, or like they're trying to come up with what they want to consider bona fide investigative research so that you can pull the information. They want to deem what is bona fide, not anybody that's out there. When it comes to, you have an interest, you want to start your own investigation, you have every right as a taxpaying citizen to take into those documents to ensure that everything is accountable, every line item is actually matching where it's supposed to go. So under my administration, we ensure that those windows of opportunity are widened so that there is no limitation to the public, like we have the California Public Records Act. It should be utilized way more and broadened so that you can get into those and ensure that all of the money is aligned for and accounted for. That's one of the things that we need to do. But we want to make sure that we're going to have continued transparency. We also want to make sure, again, that these agencies are limited. We don't want to have so many where we can't keep track of them. And so these agencies need to be aligned properly, also constitutionally, and with the state controller, and per county, and per open public committees, so that they can get the necessary paperwork. This is what we need so that we can ensure that finances are going to where they need to before it gets cut in the store.
Title 4E. This is where, if you don't know Title 4E, go look it up. But this is where the feds go and they do a sort of a match with the incentive. Why is this so important? Because there's an incentive year after year to make sure that the budgets, the county's budgets, align with the Title 4E investment. Think about how that works. So they're incentivized to make sure they maximize that. How do you do that? You push through cases that shouldn't be pushed through. You have cases funded to the highest level that shouldn't be funded. You pay the attorneys more. Hey, let's keep this going, right? It's all about their budget. It's discussing it has to go. So we're going to do complete forensic audits on everything in the budget, but we're going to target what's going on with Title 4E specifically, because this is where most of the money is stolen, right there. Now, there's something that nobody wants to talk about that has been very effective, and we can start to use this. Back in the day, Julie Holburn didn't pioneer RICO, but he figured out how to use RICO. And RICO, racketeering and corruption, is what it's about. Why is that important? You can use RICO in a civil case. You, right here, anytime, you can go and establish a RICO case if you want. Think about it. This is how they completely cleared out the Italian mob in New York.
30 seconds.
Using RICO. Using RICO. How would you like to have an opportunity, right, to clear out these fraudulent attorneys, right? Put together and use RICO. I'm telling you, it's the future, and this is where we take our power. So true.
Most of the time, it's unbelievable. A family is $2,500 to $3,000 away from paying rent and staying together. And they don't do it. And to take a child out of the home with a child who's in foster care system is about $120,000. Imagine $120,000 to take a child away from hostage, to start the process, versus coming up to the rent. And I think the problem is a very big problem to solve here today, because we're here about talking about one thing, which is probate, which I was here to talk about, which is probate. I don't know that much about some of the experiences you guys have. Because I have a lot of friends who are judges and a lot of friends who are lawyers and a lot of lawyers. But I do know oversight and there is a momentum to keep it going because the grift is huge. The grift is as big as money grab. That's a big grift too. We live in a grift. We're all in it. We're all in it together. And the way to get through it is transparency, and the way to get through it is oversight. And breaking it down. Like I said, Chapter 9 bankruptcy is out crazy when it works because once you stop paying people, the people that are stealing go away. Okay? Once you stop it, once you put eyes on it, they all go away. And the only way to do it is stop it in its tracks. And unfortunately, it's Chapter 9 municipal bankruptcy of all of our major cities will start with that. So wait, we're out of money, so we won't have choice.
How can a minor ever be subjected to that decision whether a parent agrees or not? As an adult, you make that decision. As a minor, sorry, off the table. Right? This is God's thing. Exactly. This is completely off the table. Absolutely, you cannot transition a child. Right? We're being manipulated through a color revolution, through the schools. This is all intentional. It's to divide and it's to conquer us. And we play these little mind games. Well, in this case or this case. No, I'm sorry, you're either born or the boy or the girl. If we're trying to appease somebody with the conversation, we're literally playing into their whorehouse. We cannot do this. This is God's world, not theirs.
This is the dumbest thing that I cannot believe that we're having to endure this. Why? I'm going to use the laws. Okay? It's one of the things I love to do. I go back to the Declaration of Independence. Under the laws of nature and of nature's God. That means of nature you are X, Y, good. There you go. I think it's like section 3011. Under general welfare, when a child is brought into their jurisdiction for mental health, under transgenderism, of whether or not they want to engage in identity, fluidity, and so on. No, it's irrelevant because of the laws of nature and of nature's God, which is what our declaration is the foundation to the Articles of Confederation that turned into the Constitution of the United States. So when we have these laws that our judges are engaging upon, it's called Marxism. Also wrote the Pillars of Abolition, which was the separation of family. And this is one of the best things that you can do to separate families, is to try to convince a child or a minor, like our state likes to define and separate minor, child, and so on by different age groups, so that they can divide a family in saying that a child has the right to their own medical records. No, you don't. But a minor can affirm with an adult if they're 10 years apart to have sex with an adult. If you're 14, you have sex and you decide to, you consent to a 24-year-old, that's okay. That adult doesn't have to register as a sex offender. Nonsense. So in my administration, if a law is repugnant to the supreme law of the land, it's null and void. Our judicial branch is to ensure that these kind of laws are removed and stricken from the court.
Also, the right is bestowed upon us to be parents to our children. So why is it that the judges in the courts and family courts are taking our children, making decisions for our children, that is not what we want for our children? God has given us the ability to parent our children, and the courts have taken that away from us. The 14th Amendment has given us that right. However, these judges want to transition our children. They want to abuse our children. My son had lifelong medical complications as a result of the medical abuse he endured because the judge said that was in the best interest of the child. So again, we have the right to parent our children and to ensure that their health and safety. That's what I do on a daily basis for my students, and I've done over the last 23 years as a teacher, counselor, and school principal. I will do everything to end judicial immunity.
I can tell you for sure that the Newsom administration right now and all our attorneys, they're using what we call scorched earth tactics on us right now because they know that they're out. So when an enemy starts to lose and pull back, because currently there's not an appetite for Democrats. I just did 58 counties in 30 days, and I can tell you, there's not an appetite, so they know they're going down. Why is that a problem? Because now they're going to scorch earth, they're going to make it as hard on anybody that's coming in to do anything that's positive.
That's right.
Just vote no.
Here's the I'm glad you said that, but here's the problem. I'm actually an expert on election reform. I can tell you I just toured and we went to interview all 58 registered voters in the last 30 days. I have a documentary that I'm going to be releasing very, very soon on this, on how the elections were stolen. If you do not think the elections are stolen, you need to pull your head out of your absolutely stolen. 100%. We have the evidence. I've interviewed ex-CIA agents. They told me how it's done. I have the top forensic scientists and mathematicians on this. I have all the evidence. I've seen the inside of the machines in the software where somebody can flip the vote by a touch of 2 buttons.
Right.
Okay? I literally had an assistant ROV tell me, pull me aside and go, Lewis, if they're telling you that we can't hack the system, they're lying to you. This was somebody that's actually in the system right now. Okay? So now that we cleared that, here's the good news.
Thank you.
If there's election fraud, it's law that fraud vitiates everything.
Yeah.
Think about this. Now, why does that matter? Because if fraud vitiates everything, now we can start to reset back as long as we can prove it. Very, very, very important that we do this because guess what? That supermajority, goodbye. Right? It's all gone. It's going to be a hard fight, folks. This is where you have to stand up, and anybody who thinks it doesn't exist, you need to re-educate them because I will die on this hill showing everybody that election fraud is real, and this is how we got here today. Fraud vitiates everything. That's the hope that we have.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the Flying Monkey podcast. Like, follow, and subscribe to our social media sites on Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, and Truth Social. You can also go straight to our webpage at www.flyingmonkeypodcast.com.
Are you struggling in family court with parental alienation? Parents who are victims of a child or teenager rejecting contact, commonly known as parental alienation, find themselves in a sea of complex confusion and trauma. The family courts exacerbate the problem, are enormously costly, and enable the alienation behaviors to thrive. You find yourself on an endless treadmill without a strategy or solution. There is a common-sense, science-driven remedy to confront and restore your family, but it is the polar opposite of the useless court strategies. It provides a viable alternative that can simply explain the etiology of what is called parental alienation in terms that are intuitive, comprehensible, and logical, and that provide a solution pathway. When we are told that a child or teenager is rejecting a parent without an obvious reason, it suggests that there is a cause and an effect. Our group has quietly rescued many children for their loving parents using this alternative strategy. If you would like to learn how to rescue your children or teenagers, we are available to talk. Schedule a time with us and see if our process is a fit for your needs. Click the link in this post to schedule your free appointment.